Shalom. Call Halim La Yahweh Bashem. Yahweh Shai Bashem Rakak Double honors to the elders and apostles of Great Millstone who rule and teach well. And a sincere shalom to 144,001 So, when you look at the history of humanity on the earth, technology has advanced rapidly, especially the past 200, pretty much since Jake's been in captivity. That's the best way of putting it. Technology has, specifically when it comes to weapons, technology has rapidly increased on the earth when Jake fell. Because if you look at when Jake fell in Europe, the Southern Kingdom, you had the Renaissance come in, and that's when you saw the advancement of swords, and then better crossbows, and then the musket, and later on you had the fighter jets and tanks and so on and so forth. So let's get a few scriptures. Let's go to I'm gonna go to Isaiah the 54th chapter. Isaiah the 54th chapter and verse 16. Behold, I have created the smith that bloweth the coals in the fire, and that bringeth forth an instrument for his work, and I have created the waster to destroy. So what it means and what it takes to be a smith today isn't necessarily what you would traditionally think of in the past, because technology has advanced. Now you have people that work with lasers and bending light to create these computer chips that go into these fighter jets and these robots and so on and so forth. Yahweh created the knowledge to allow these people, these humans, these heathen, to put it to work, primarily for weaponry, okay? Like the MOTB, the C-HIP, the Karagma, that is a technology of Yahweh used to basically put people to death that Yahweh once put to death. This is the best explanation for it, the most simplest explanation for it. And right here, okay, this Silicera, Arissa, something like that, is basically 15, 20 foot long spear. And this was the primary weapon of Alexander the Great, which was an Amalekite, an Edomite, Amalek being the chief house of Edom. And this was his primary weapon he was utilizing as the Greeks started taking over parts of the known world at the time. You know, what was it? Persia, the Medes, Elam, Egypt, the actual Greeks, which is Japhet. This was his primary weapon. Now, what's spiritual about these spears and all that is the next photo I'm about to show you in a little bit. So this is I'm gonna go to Genesis now. Genesis the 27th chapter and verse 40. And it reads, and by that, and I'm actually verse 38. And Esau said unto his father, which is Isaac, which is Yahweh Shai, hast thou but one blessing, my father? Bless me, even me also, O my father. And Esau lifted up his voice and wept. And Isaac, his father, answered and said unto him, behold, thy dwelling shall be the fatness of the earth and the dew of heaven from above. So that means Esau would have dominion over the earth, which came to pass when Esau came back into power during the Renaissance, which is what, the 14th century, 1300s, till now. Esau came and what? He took Australia, he took the Americas, he took New Zealand, partially took over South Africa. All right, he went through Africa, taking the Southern Kingdom down, subjugating the other Hamites, other heathen, right? And the dew of heaven from above. So guess what? Esau's going to have dominion, all right? And you look, Esau's wealthy, got the best technology, best healthcare, best food, especially the global elites. They're above the law. Now, yes, we're at the end of this devil's kingdom, so the typical Edomite is struggling now, right? They're going through hardship, and it's going to get worse for you devils. Verse 40. And by thy sword shalt thou live, and shalt serve thy brother, and it shall come to pass when thou shalt have the dominion, and that thou shalt break his yoke from off thy neck. And then that was primarily King David, and when the Southern Kingdom was ruling in Europe too, that was the most recent one, the most impactful one, because the Southern Kingdom, which would be so-called blacks in the Americas, like the Caribbeans and Haiti in North America, Negroes. Negro is just black in Spanish. That's all Negro means, black in Spanish. Okay, so the Southern Kingdom was actually in Europe, ruling over Europe for about 1,000 years. They were the knights. They built the castles, all of the cathedrals, and so on and so forth. All that was Judah, Benjamin, and Levi running that. And then the Edomites were subjugated, right? They were put in a captivity, okay? And then, as time went on, they rose up. Do we know specifically how? We don't know, but they did, right? They rose up, overthrew the Southern Kingdom, pushed them back, kicked them out of Europe. One of the most infamous kicking out of the Southern Kingdom was 1492 of the Jews of Spain, I believe it was. They were kicked out in 1492. Not a coincidence, that same year is when Christopher Columbus supposedly set sail or landed here in the Americas. Okay? And then what happened? Esau used that sword. And guess what? That sword is what's going to be his downfall. Because guess what? Isaac, as Yahushua said, if you live by that sword, you're going to die by that sword. So let's get that in St. Matthew. St. Matthew and the 26th chapter. And I'm going to read verse 52. Then Yahushua said unto him, who? Peter, put up again thy sword into his place, which is the sheath. For all they that take the sword shall perish with the sword. Now, does that mean you can't get a sword for self-defense or to go to war? No. But depending on the logic behind it, are you doing it in righteousness, wickedness? Is Yahweh with you to guide you and deliver you? Right? Now, of course, in that specific moment, Peter was going off. That's why Yahushua had to correct him. But guess what? You Edomites, your whole existence is off. You're not going off. You just existing is off. Okay? And you're going to die by that sword. Now, let's go. You've been looking at the screen of this Larissa or whatever. A very long spear. Now, let's check this out. Boom. Missile. This is spiritual because they look very similar and they do the same purpose. To inflict damage upon your opposition from a very long distance. That's what a missile does. That's what a spear does. And it's not a coincidence that they look very similar. Okay? Now, as we know in Revelations, let's get it. Revelations, the 9th chapter. And I'm going to read verse 16. And the number of the army, what is this army? This is the nuclear missiles that are going to fly over the oceans to pelt this place known as the USA, to obliterate it from off the face of the earth. And the number of the army of the horsemen were 200,000, and I heard the number of them. So what is these horsemen, these missiles? And what is 200,000? That's 200 million nuclear missiles that are going to blow this place to smithereens. This is going to become the lake of fire. All right? Now, people say, oh, the lake of, what I mean by people, I mean these bug-out Israelites, okay, these two-thirds, these Christians and these other dogma religions. They say that the lake of fire and hell and whatever, it's all the same, right? Because one, they don't read the scriptures. Two, they're imbeciles, right? It's not a lot of very intelligent people on a face of the earth. So let's get this right here. This is Revelations 20 and 14. And death and hell were cast into the lake of fire. This is the second death. Let's reread that again. Revelations 20 and 14. And death and hell were cast into the lake of fire. This is the second death. So if hell is this mystical place where you burn, right? It's basically like a lake of fire, right? Because that's what these false religions say, hell. No, if you go to like India, their version of hell is a little different. But the Christian hell is basically the lake of fire. So a lake of fire is going to be thrown in the lake of fire. You see how delusional these people are, all right? Because the spirit of Yahweh is not dealing with them. And hell, all right, when you go into it with the Greek and the Hebrew, it has like 3 or 4 different meanings. When you see the word hell, it could be Hades, it could be Gehenna or Shiloh, all right? So Gehenna was a fire pit, okay? Gehenna was a fire pit. Not specifically a fire pit. It was a dump. It was a landfill. Okay, so a landfill is where you throw trash, okay, garbage, and they would burn it. So the ancient Israelites, our forefathers, they had it called Gehenna, and that's one meaning of the word hell in the scriptures. And then another meaning is Hades, which is Greek mythology of the underworld with Siberius and all this other madness. And then you have Shiloh, which means like the grave, right? Where you're buried at, right? The death. So when it says death and hell, all right, and also hell could mean like in a condition, okay? Like, for example, King David, let's get that. So this is Psalms 18 and 5. The sorrows of hell compassed me about. The snares of death prevented me. So he was going into that because King David was at war, and he was going through it. All right. Then you had Jonah. He said he was in hell while he was swallowed by that fish. Okay, so hell could also just be a very dangerous, lowly condition. So when the scripture says death and hell is cast in the lake of fire, it's symbolic for the Israelites. Because once the nukes hit and Babylon is destroyed, the elect are going to be beamed up, become immortal. We're not going to sin anymore. We're not going to get sick. We're not going to go through any type of negative situations. We're not going to have any more hardship. It's just going to be pure luxury and benefits forever. You understand? Now let's go back to Revelations 9 and verse 19. For their power is in their mouth. What is this referring to? That's the nuclear warhead. Okay, because the missile itself isn't the one that's going to cause the damage. It has multiple parts that come off. and the actual part of the missile that damages, the target is in the head. It detaches, and it could be one big nuke on the head, or up to like 5 or 6 smaller ones. Okay, for their power is in their mouth. Yeah, so that represents the warhead being detached, and in their tail. So the tail, as you can see, is what's going to propel it forward. That's a propulsion system. For their tails were like unto serpents. Yeah, as you can see, it leaves that trail behind. All right, and had heads, and with them they do hurt. Yeah, so the heads is going into those missiles flying from the mouth when it's released. Okay, so guess what? What is all of this leading to? This is all leading to the destruction of this place known as the United States of America, which is Babylon the Great. The whore riding upon the beast, the scarlet colored whore riding upon the beast. And these devils created these missiles. All right? Yahweh gave them the blueprint for their own destruction. Hey, Adawan Ratazada was edifying. Shalom.